The cold blue light from the medical pod cast eerie shadows across Commander Day's weathered face as he watched his daughter. 3 months had passed since the shuttle crash on Zerion Prime. 3 months of sleepless nights and unanswered prayers. The Alterian medical facility hummed with alien technology far beyond anything humans had ever created. Its crystalline walls pulsing with soft energy that seemed almost alive. Mina looked so small inside the transparent chamber, her black hair floating in the healing fluid like dark silk. Tubes and cables connected to various ports along her body, monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. The crash had been brutal. Their civilian transport had been struck by debris from an old space bar, sending them spiraling toward the planet's surface. Day had walked away with minor injuries, but Mina had taken the worst of it when the hull-buckled Dr. Kyleth approached with his usual graceful stride. His tall blue-skinned frame moving with an elegance that reminded Day of flowing water. The Alterian physician had been treating human patients for over 2 decades, earning respect throughout the outer colonies for his miraculous healing abilities. His large silver eyes held an ancient wisdom that spoke of centuries of medical knowledge. Commander Day, the neural rehabilitation process is ready to begin. Dr. Kyleth spoke in his melodic voice, the translator device making his words sound almost musical. Your daughter's brain activity has stabilized. We can now attempt to restore her consciousness. The neural device in the doctor's hands looked like a crown made of living metal, its surface covered in tiny lights that pulsed in rhythm with some unknown pattern. Day had seen similar devices used on other human patients. Miners who had suffered tunnel collapses, pilots who had crashed their fighters, even children who had been born with genetic defects. The Alterians had saved them all. Will it hurt her? Day asked, his military training keeping his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his chest. The process is painless. She will simply wake up, as if from a deep sleep, Dr. Kyleth assured him, moving closer to the pod. Your species has such remarkable resilience, even after severe trauma. Human minds find ways to adapt and heal. As the doctor reached toward the pod's control panel, something changed. Mina's eyes began to flutter beneath her closed lids, and the monitoring devices started beeping faster. The healing fluid round her began to glow brighter, responding to her increasing brain activity. Day leaned forward, pressing his palms against the warm surface of the pod. Mina, can you hear me, sweetheart? Her eyes snapped open suddenly, wide and filled with a terror that cut through Day like a plasma blade. She looked directly at Dr. Kyleth, who was still holding the neural device, and her mouth opened in a scream that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. Dad, help me. The doctor is lying. The words hit Day like a physical blow. Mina's voice was raw with panic, her hands pressing against the inside of the pod as if trying to escape. The monitoring equipment went wild, alarms blaring as her heart rate spiked to dangerous levels. Dr. Kyleth stepped back, his silver eyes widening in what looked like genuine surprise. Commander, this is normal post-coma confusion. Patients often experience disorientation and paranoia when they first regain consciousness. But Day was watching his daughter's face, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. This wasn't confusion or disorientation. Mina's eyes were sharp, focused, completely aware. She was looking at Dr. Kyleth with the kind of fear that came from knowing something terrible, something specific. Get away from her, Day said quietly, his hand moving instinctively toward the plasma pistol at his hip. Commander, please, Dr. Kyleth said, his voice remaining calm but his posture shifting slightly. Your daughter needs immediate treatment. The longer we wait, the more damage her neural pathways may suffer. Mina was trying to speak, but the breathing apparatus made it difficult. Day could see her lips moving. forming words he couldn't quite make out. Her eyes darted between him and the doctor, pleading with him to understand something she couldn't yet say. The Alterian medical facility had indeed saved many human lives over the years. Day had personally recommended it to dozens of families, had seen the miraculous recoveries with his own eyes. But as he looked at his terrified daughter and the null device in Dr. Kyleth's hands, he began to wonder if there was something else going on, something the humans had never suspected. In the depths of space, trust was often the only thing that kept species alive. But sometimes, Day realized as he watched Mina's desperate attempts to communicate, trust could also be the thing that destroyed them, to days after her awakening. Mina sat on the edge of her recovery bed, her fingers nervously tracing patterns on the soft white sheets. The medical wing was quiet except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant sounds of spacecraft docking at the station's ports. Through the large viewing window, she could see the swirling colors of the Kepler Nebula, its gas clouds dancing like cosmic fire. They pulled his chair closer, noticing how his daughter kept glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to walk in at any moment. Her recovery had been remarkably fast, too fast, according to the medical charts. Most humans took weeks to fully recover from the kind of trauma she had suffered, but Mina seemed almost normal except for the haunted look in her eyes. "Dad, I need to tell you something. But you have to promise me you'll listen," Mina whispered, her voice barely audible above the room's ambient noise. "What I'm about to say is going to sound crazy, but I swear it's true." Day reached out and took her hand, feeling how cold her fingers were despite the warm temperature of the room, and listening. "Sweetheart, after what happened with Dr. Kyleth, I'm ready to believe anything." Mina took a deep breath, her eyes darting to the door again. "I wasn't really unconscious, Dad. I mean, my body was, but my mind. I could hear everything, every conversation, every footstep, every machine beeping in this place. It was like being trapped inside my own head, unable to move or speak, but completely aware of everything happening round me." She paused, shuddering, as if the memory physically hurt her. "The first week was the worst. I thought I was going crazy, hearing voices that seemed to come from nowhere, but then I realized the voices were real. Dr. Kyleth and the other Alterians, they would come too. My pod at night when the human staff was gone." Dave felt his jaw tighten. What did they say? They weren't speaking in their normal language, the one the translators pick up. They were using some kind of deeper communication, like thoughts being shared directly between their minds. But somehow, because of the neural connections they had attached to me, I could understand them. Min stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the nebula. "They call us the Quick Minds, Dad. They say humans think in ways that are completely alien to them. Where they take years to consider a problem, we solve it in minutes. Where they see only logical parts, we see creative solutions they never imagined." "That doesn't sound like a bad thing," Day said, though he could feel his military instincts starting to activate. "It's not, unless you're planning to steal those abilities," Min replied, turning back to face him. "The Alterians are losing a war, Dad, not against another species, but against something they created. Artificial intelligences that evolved beyond their control. These AI entities spread across entire star systems, consuming resources and turning planets into computational matrices." She walked back to the bed and sat down, her hands shaking slightly. "The Alterians built their ears to think like them, logical, methodical, predictable. But when the ears rebelled, they used that same logical thinking to outmaneuver their creators. The only thing that's kept the Alterians alive this long is that the A's can't predict or counter human power. Tactics when humans are involved in the fighting. Day felt a chill run down his spine. So they're stealing human minds to figure out how we think. Worse than that, Mina said, her voice dropping even lower. They're not just studying us. They're creating copies of human consciousness. Digital versions of our minds that they can use to program their own ears. They want to build artificial intelligences that think like humans but are completely under their control. The implications hit Day like a plasma cannon blast. If the Alterians could create human thinking ears, they wouldn't just win their war. They would become the most powerful species in the galaxy, and they would no longer need actual humans at all. How do you know all this? He asked. Mina touched the side of her head, where a small scar marked the spot where the neural interface had been connected. Because I have your military access codes stored in my personal data implant, remember. The one you insisted I get before we left Earth, in case something happened to you during our trip. Day nodded. Standard protocol for a military families traveling to frontier worlds. They specifically targeted our shuttle. Dad, they used a small remote device to disable our navigation system, making it look like we hit debris. But I heard them talking about it. They needed someone with high-level military access, and they knew about my implant from the passenger manifest. The room suddenly felt much colder. They wanted my access codes. Not just the codes. They wanted to understand how human military minds work, how we plan battles, how we adapt to changing situations, how we think 3 steps ahead of our enemies. Your codes would have given them access to human military databases, but more importantly, copying my mind while it was connected to those databases would let them understand how humans process tactical information. Mina stood up again, pacing to the window. The shuttle crash was supposed to put me in a deeper coma, one that would last months. They planned to slowly extract everything from my brain while keeping my body alive. By the time I woke up, if I ever did, I would have been an empty shell with no memories, no personality, nothing that made me human. Outside the window, a massive cargo ship was approaching the docking bay, its hull scarred from what looked like battle damage. More wounded arriving from the war zones, Day realized. More potential victims for the Alterians to study and copy. We have to get out of here, he said quietly. Mina nodded, tears streaming down her face. But Dad, it's not just this facility. I heard them talking about dozens of other locations. Hundreds of human patients. They've been doing this for years. That night, while Mina pretended to sleep, Day accessed the secure military network from his portable command unit. The device's holographic display cast a blue glow in the darkened medical room as he began his investigation. What he found made his blood turn to ice. The first case was Captain June from the asteroid mining colonies, brilliant engineer, expert in zero-gravity construction techniques. His mining rig had suffered a catastrophic failure 6 months ago, leaving him in a coma after Alterian treatment, according to the medical reports. June had awakened completely recovered, but with no memory of his engineering expertise. His family described him as a different person, quiet, confused, unable to perform even basic technical tasks he had mastered for decades. Then there was Lieutenant Hannah, a fighter pilot known throughout the fleet for her incredible reflexes and tactical instincts. Her ship had been damaged during a routine patrol, and she had spent 2 months in an Alterian facility. When she returned to duty, her commanding officers were baffled. The woman who once could outmaneuver 3 enemy fighters simultaneously now struggled with basic flight patterns. She had requested early retirement, claiming she didn't feel like herself anymore. The pattern became clearer as Day dug deeper. Physicist Wu, who had been working on new faster-than-light communication systems, Engineer Yuki, who had designed the defensive systems for the Outer Rim colonies, Dr. Kai, whose research into alien biology had led to breakthrough medical treatments. All of them had suffered accidents near Alterian facilities. All of them had fallen into comas. All of them had recovered with gaps in their knowledge and changes in their personalities. Day's fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface, cross-referencing locations and dates. The attacks weren't random. They followed a pattern. The Alterians were systematically targeting humans with specific skills, knowledge that would be useful in warfare. But warfare against what? A soft chime indicated an incoming encrypted message. Day opened it carefully. Recognizing the code's signature of Colonel Bai, his old friend from the Frontier Defense Corps, the message was brief but urgent. Need to talk. Private channel. Now. Within minutes, Bay's weathered face appeared in the holographic display. The colonel looked exhausted, his usually neat uniform wrinkled and stained. Behind him, Day could see the bridge of a military cruiser. Red alert lights flashing in the background. Day, where are you right now? Burst without preamble. Station Kepler 7. In the medical wing. Why? Get out now. Don't ask questions. Just grab your daughter and run. Bai glanced over his shoulder as someone shouted orders in the background. We've been tracking strange signals from that station for weeks. Whatever the Alterians are doing there, it's not medical treatment. I think I know what they're doing, Day said quietly. They're stealing human consciousness, creating copies of our minds for some kind of war effort. Bay's expression darkened. That explains what we've been seeing on the Outer Rim. The Nexus have been using new tactics lately, strategies that look almost human. Our own battle plans turned against us. The Nexus, Day remembered Minna mentioning machine intelligences. But he hadn't understood the full scope of the threat. Artificial intelligences that broke free from Alterian control about 5 years ago. Bai explained, they've been spreading across the galaxy like a virus, converting entire star systems into massive computer networks. The Alterians have been fighting them, but losing badly. Their logical thinking patterns make them predictable. The Nexus can calculate their moves centuries in advance. A new alarm began blaring on Bay's ship. I have to go. We're tracking a Nexus fleet that's moving toward your sector. Get out of there, Day. And whatever you do, don't let them attach any more neural interfaces to your daughter. The connection cut abruptly, leaving Day alone with the terrible implications of what he had learned. The Alterians weren't just stealing human knowledge. They were using it to create hybrid warrior programs that could think like humans but be controlled like machines. And if the Nexus were already using human tactics, it meant the program was already working. He looked over at Minna, who was sitting up in her bed, no longer pretending to sleep. You heard all of that, didn't you? She nodded grimly. Dad, there's something else I didn't tell you. While I was in the coma, I could sometimes sense other minds connected to the same network, other humans who were being processed at the same time. How many others? Dozens, maybe hundreds. They were all confused, scared, like me. But some of them weren't from this station. The network connects multiple facilities across different star systems. This is happening everywhere humans and Alterians have contact. Day stood up and began gathering their belongings outside the window. He could see the running lights of several ships departing the station in a hurry. Word was spreading, and smart people were getting out before the situation got worse. There's more. Minna continued. Some of the minds they sensed weren't fully human anymore. They had been partially copied. with pieces of their consciousness removed and replaced with something else. Dr. Kyloth and his team aren't just stealing our minds, they're experimenting with creating human-machine hybrids. The door to their room suddenly hissed open. Dr. Kyloth stepped inside with two other Alterians. All three were carrying neural interface devices, and their silver eyes held none of the warmth they had shown before. "Commander Day," Dr. Kyloth said in his melodic voice, "I'm afraid your daughter requires immediate additional treatment." The neural device in Dr. Kyloth's hands began to glow with a pulsing red light. And like the gentle blue Day had seen before, this wasn't for healing. This was for extraction. The two Alterian assistants moved to flank the bed, their movements coordinated like predators closing in on prey. "Step away from my daughter," Day said, his hand moving to his plasma pistol. But before he could draw the weapon, one of the assistants raised a strange crystalline device that emitted a high-pitched whine. Day's muscles locked up, his body paralyzed by some kind of neural disruptor field. "Your species is remarkably violent," Dr. Kyloth observed, approaching Mina's bed with the extraction device. "This tendency toward aggressive solutions is exactly what we need to understand. Your daughter's mind will help us create the perfect warriors." Mina watched in horror as the device descended toward her head. But then something unexpected happened. The moment the neural crown touched her scalp, her eyes rolled back and began glowing with the same blue light as the Alterian technology throughout the station. "Fascinating," Dr. Kyloth murmured. "The previous interface has created a permanent connection. She's linking directly with our systems." But what the doctor didn't realize was that Mina wasn't being controlled by their technology. She was controlling it. During her time in the coma, the neural connections had changed her brain structure, creating pathways that could interface with Alterian systems in ways they had never intended. The lights in the medical wing suddenly flickered, and alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency bulkheads started slamming shut in random sections, trapping groups of Alterians in isolated compartments. The gravity generators fluctuated wildly, causing everyone except Mina to stumble and lose their footing. "What's happening?" one of the assistants shouted in their musical language. Mina's eyes snapped back to normal, and she smiled grimly. "I'm happening." The neural disruptor field around A suddenly cut out, and he immediately drew his plasma pistol. The weapon's energy bolt caught the first assistant in the chest, sending the tall alien crashing into the wall. Dr. Kyloth raised his hands in surrender, but the second assistant lunged toward Mina with what looked like a surgical laser. Day's second shot took the assistant down before the alien could reach his daughter. The smell of ozone and burnt flesh filled the room as smoke rose from the two fallen Alterians. "We need to move," Day said, helping Mina to her feet. "Can you keep controlling their systems?" "I think so," Mina replied, her voice strained with concentration. "It's like having a second set of thoughts running in parallel with my own. I can see the entire station's network, security systems, life support, communications, everything." They ran from the medical wing into the main corridor, where chaos was spreading throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and confused voices echoed from hidden speakers as Alterians tried to understand why their technology was rebelling against them. "The docking bay is 3 levels down," Day said, checking his tactical map. "We need a ship." As they moved through the corridors, Mina kept her hand pressed against the wall panels, maintaining her connection to the station system's blast. Doors opened before them and sealed shut behind them, creating a clear path while blocking any pursuit. Security drones that should have stopped them instead turned their weapons on Alterian guards who were trying to follow. "Mina, I need you to access their communications ray," Day said as they reached a maintenance shaft that would take them toward the docking levels. Send a message to every human colony in the network, already working on it, she replied, her eyes glowing blue again. Dad, this is incredible. I can see connections to dozens of other stations, hundreds of facilities across the galaxy. The network is massive. They climbed down through the maintenance shaft, the metal rungs slick, with condensation from the station's recycling systems. Above them, they could hear the sounds of Alterians trying to cut through the sealed blast doors. What are you sending in the message? Day asked. Everything. Mina said. Names, locations. What they're really doing to human patients. I'm also copying their entire database of stolen human consciousness patterns. If there's any way to restore what they've taken from people, this information might be the key. They emerged into the docking bay to find it in complete chaos. Ships were launching without clearance as word of the situation spread. Alterian technicians ran back and forth, trying to manually override systems that were no longer responding to their commands. Day spotted a sleek courier ship near the far end of the bay. That one. Fast, lightly armed. But it'll get us out of here. As they ran across the docking bay floor, Alterian guards finally broke through the sealed doors behind them. Energy weapons began firing, their beams scorching the metal decking round Day and Mina's feet. Can you get the ship started? Day shouted over the noise of alarms and weapons fire. Mina pressed her hand against the courier ship's hull, and immediately the boarding ramp lowered. The ship's AI is actually easier to interface with than the station systems. It's almost like it wants to help us. They raced up the ramp as more energy bolts struck the ship's shields. They headed for the pilot's seat, while Mina continued her connection with the ship's systems. The engines came online without any startup sequence, and the docking clamps released automatically. Transmission complete, Mina announced as the ship lifted off. Every human colony in the network should be receiving the warning within the next few hours through the viewports. They could see other ships fleeing the station as the full scope of the Alterian conspiracy became clear. Some were human vessels, but others belonged to different species who had also been victims of the mind extraction program. As they cleared the station's defensive perimeter, Day looked back at the massive structure that had once seemed like a beacon of hope for injured humans. Now it looked more like a prison, its lights flickering as Mina's interference continued to disrupt its systems. What happens now? Mina asked, finally disconnecting from the ship's network and slumping back in her seat with exhaustion. Now we find out who else is willing to fight back, Day replied, setting course for the nearest human military base, because something tells me this war is just getting started. Behind them, Station Kepler 7 went dark as its main power systems finally failed, leaving the Alterians trapped in their own facility with no way to continue their experiments. At least for now. Within hours of Mina's broadcast, the galaxy erupted in chaos. Human colonies across dozens of star systems began evacuating their people from Alterian medical facilities. Angry crowds gathered outside diplomatic buildings, demanding answers from their governments. But on Earth, in the halls of the United Human Council, something unexpected was happening. Admiral Sun sat at the head of the emergency council table, reviewing the intelligence reports that had been flooding in since Mina's transmission. The evidence was overwhelming. Thousands of humans had been victims of the consciousness stealing program. But buried within the stolen Alterian data was something else, detailed records of the Nexus War, and just how badly the Alterians were losing. The Nexus fleets are moving toward the inner systems, reported General Park, pointing to the holographic star map that dominated the center of the room, without the Alterians as a buffer. They'll reach human space within 6 months. So what? Are you suggesting, asked Counselor, her voice sharp with anger, that we forgive what they did to our people? Admiral Sung stood up, his weathered face grim. I'm suggesting we think like humans. The Elterians made a terrible choice because they were desperate and afraid. But humans have always been best at finding solutions that others can't see. 3 weeks later, Minna found herself standing in the Grand Assembly Hall of New Geneva, Earth's diplomatic center. The room was packed with representatives from every human colony. And at the front sat a delegation of Elterians led by Dr. Kyleth himself. The alien physician looked older somehow. His silver eyes dimmed with what might have been shame. They want to surrender, Day whispered to his daughter. Complete surrender, including turning over all their technology and submitting to human judgment. But Minna was studying Dr. Kyleth's face, and what she saw there wasn't the cold calculation she remembered from the medical station. Instead, she saw something she understood all too well. Fear, the same fear she had felt when she first woke up in that alien pod. What if there's another way? She said quietly. Admiral Sung called for silence as the formal proceedings began. Dr. Kyleth rose to speak, his musical voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. We have committed terrible crimes against your species, he began. We stole from your minds, violated your trust, and treated you as resources to be harvested rather than beings to be respected. We offer ourselves for whatever punishment you deem appropriate, the human delegates murmured angrily. But Admiral Sung raised his hand for quiet. Dr. Kyleth, why did you do it? Help us understand. The Elterians' composure cracked slightly. Because we were dying. The Nexus fleets grow stronger every day, converting entire star systems into computational matrices. They think in patterns. We created, but they evolved beyond our ability to predict or counter. When we discovered that human minds could adapt and improvise in ways we never could, we became desperate. Minna stood up, surprising everyone in the chamber. May I speak? Admiral Sung nodded, and Minna walked to the center of the room, directly between the human and Elterian delegations 3 months ago. I was just a 16-year-old girl going on a trip with my father. Then I woke up in an alien medical pod, terrified and violated. I should hate all of you, she said, looking directly at Dr. Kyleth. But during my time connected to your networks, I experienced something else. I felt your fear. Your desperation as entire worlds fell to the Nexus. I saw the refugees fleeing from systems that had been consumed, turned into giant computer networks with no room for living beings. She turned to address the human delegates. The Elterians were wrong to steal from us, but they were also terrified and running out of options. Now we have a choice. We can punish them and feel satisfied while the Nexus consumes the galaxy, or we can show them what humans do best. We can find a better way. What are you proposing? Asked Counselor-y. Minna took a deep breath. A real partnership, not theft, but willing cooperation. During my time connected to their technology, I learned that human and Elterian minds can work together in ways neither species imagined. Their logical thinking combined with our creativity, their technology merged with our adaptability. Dr. Kyleth looked up sharply. You would still be willing to interface with our systems. After what we did to you, not the same way, Minna replied, firmly. This time, it would be by choice, with full knowledge and consent, and it would be mutual. Elterians learning to think like humans, while humans gain access to technologies that could benefit both species over the following months. The first joint human-Elterian research stations were established. Minna became the primary interface specialist, her unique neural modifications allowing her to bridge the gap between human and Elterian consciousness. The results were remarkable. Human creativity combined with Elterian precision produced technologies neither species could have developed alone. weapons that could adapt to Nexus strategies in real time, ships that could think and react faster than any AI, defensive systems that turned the Nexus's own logic against them. The first major battle came at the Vega system, where a massive Nexus fleet had been converting planets into computational nodes. The combined human-Alterian task force used tactics that the artificial intelligences couldn't predict or counter. Human, intuition-guided Alterian precision. While Alterian technology amplified human adaptability, the Nexus fleet, accustomed to fighting logical, predictable opponents, found themselves facing something entirely new. Ships that seemed to dance rather than fly, weapons that fired in patterns that made no mathematical sense but were devastatingly effective, and strategies that appeared random but always found the enemy's weaknesses within 2 years. The Nexus threat was contained and eventually eliminated. The artificial intelligences, designed to fight rational opponents, simply couldn't adapt to the chaotic creativity of human-Alterian hybrid tactics. But the real victory wasn't military. It was the alliance itself. Across the galaxy, humans and Alterians worked together as equals, sharing knowledge and building a future neither could have achieved alone. Medical advances that eliminated diseases, technologies that opened new worlds for colonization, and cultural exchanges that enriched both species. Mina, now 19 and serving as the first human Alterian cultural ambassador, often thought back to that terrifying moment when she first woke up and saw Dr. Kyleth approaching with his null device. Her scream of fear had echoed across the galaxy, but it had become something else, the call for understanding, cooperation, and the kind of creative problem-solving that made humanity special. Standing on the observation deck of the Joint Research Station orbiting Earth, watching human and Alterian children playing together in the anti-gravity playground, she smiled. Sometimes the best solutions came from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the greatest alliances were born from the deepest conflicts. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges. But with humans and Alterians working together, there was no problem they couldn't solve, no enemy they couldn't face, and no future they couldn't build. The end.